get to the final module in this course, where we're going to be talking about cross-browser testing with LambdaTest. Before we get started, I want to quickly overview the steps we're going to be taking in this module because there's a lot we're going to be doing. So the first thing we're going to do is create a LambdaTest account. This is completely free, so no worries there. The second thing we're going to do is connect the driver, aka our framework, to LambdaTest. Now, I will be using environment variables to store my secrets, which will include like my API key. So I recommend you pause the video if you need to know how to do that for your specific OS and shell. For example, I'm using a Mac with Z shell. So doing it that way will be unique. It'll be different from, let's say, like a Windows machine. So make sure you know how to set environment variables. Moving on, we will then run our automated tests and see the results in the LambdaTest UI. Then we'll actually achieve cross-browser testing, where you'll see how we can change the browsers in our framework and then see those different browsers get executed in LambdaTest. Pretty cool stuff. We'll then have different tests targeting different browsers. So we'll have like test A target Chrome and test B target like Safari. And you'll see how you can have each test specifically target different browsers and different OSs. Finally, we will complete the module by running one test that is targeting multiple browsers. So we could have one test that's targeting Chrome and the same test run again, but this time targeting Firefox. So here you see the 6 things we're going to be going through in this module. I hope you're as excited as I am because we're jumping into step number 1. Let's create a free LambdaTest account. Okay, I navigated to LambdaTest.com, and here, just in the top right corner, you'll have an option to create an account or log in. I don't think you need help creating the account, so I'm going to skip past that real quick and move on right to when you land after creating the account. Here we are. Now, hopefully the creation was easy for you, but you'll eventually land on a page that looks like this. If it's your first time logging into LambdaTest, you'll probably go through like this small tutorial or small wizard, but there will be an option for you to just click Get Started. Once you click on that, it's going to show you a bunch of information, including your access token. You're going to need this access token, so I highly recommend you copy it. Now for me, mine is blurred here because this is something you do not want to share. So make sure you copy it, but do not put this in your repo and upload it to the cloud. That's very dangerous. So please take care of your secrets. Now, you're going to have a view that's a little bit different just because it's your first time in LambdaTest. On the right-hand side here, you're going to see this capability generator, which will have a snippet of Python code, including the capabilities object that is required. Now, the only problem with the snippet is that it only works for unit test, and we're not using the unit test framework. We're using the pytest framework. So let's work on connecting our driver or our framework to LambdaTest now that we have the account created. Step 1 is to copy this access token so you have access to it now. And then we're going to set it as an environment variable. Remember, this is the part of the video that I recommend you pause and go search how to set environment variables for your specific machine and setup. I have a Mac using Z shell, and so there's a very specific way we do that here. I'm going to use the Vim editor and open my ZSHRC file. There looks like a lot going on here, but all I need to do is add 2 new environment variables. And I'm going to give them very specific names so I know what I'm working with. Right here on line 58 and 59 is where I'm going to set my environment variables. I use the export keyword to make sure that it's public to my machine, and then I'll call my first variable lt_username in all caps and set that to my username for LambdaTest. The second variable is called lt_access key with my access key that I copied from my LambdaTest account. Now that I have these environment variables set, I can close the file and then source the file to complete it. And that's it. Now I can use it in my code. The next thing you'll want to do is to copy the capabilities object that exists on this right-hand side for you. Like I said, for me, I don't have it because I've already used my LambdaTest account, but when it's your first time, you'll see what I'm talking about. It looks like a code snippet for Python over here on the right. Another way of finding that would be to go to the Automation tab here, clicking Help, and then you have the capability generator right here as well as other helpful documentation and whatnot for different types of languages, frameworks, and whatnot. So let's click Capability Generator. And it takes you to a view where you're actually able to use different languages. In our case, we want Python, and it'll show you what we need to copy into our framework. The cool thing about this is that you can change the different types of OSs that you want. So here's like Mac OS Catalina. You'll see that the capabilities object changed on the right-hand side. If we want to target a different browser, let's say like Safari, then it'd look like this over here instead. So you can actually use this capabilities generator. So then you don't have to go struggling and finding out what you need to do. Let LambdaTest build this for you, and then you can just copy this capabilities object. So for now, I'm going to switch this back to be Windows 10, and let's have the browser be Chrome. That's fine. The version is the latest one, which is 89, and the resolution is good too. Perfect. So I'm going to copy this capabilities object. Back in VS Code, in our test2do.py file, I want to show you how to create a pytest fixture for LambdaTest using just Selenium, because it is different from how we would do it in Pylenium. The first thing we need to do is import OS. Then, from Selenium, we'll import WebDriver. All right, and now it's time for us to create our pytest fixture. So let's make some space here at pytest.fixture. And I'm just going to call this one Selenium, so it's really easy to know which one this is. Let's bring this up here for a little bit of room. Now, step 1 is to define the 3 pieces we need to connect to LambdaTest. That would be our username, access key, and the remote URL to connect to our instance of LambdaTest. So, username is equal to os.getEnv, and in my zshrc file, I called this environment variable lt_username. The next one is the access key, os.getEnv, and I called this one lt access key, just like that. Then for the remote URL, you should have seen this in that starting page as well. What we have here, we're going to put the username and access key into those spots at hub.lambdatest.com/wd/hub. And then let's put these in here. We had our username into the first position and our access key into the second position. And there we go. Step 2 is then to define the desired capabilities for this specific test run. This is where we're going to paste in the capabilities object that we copied. So just to follow the code snippet that they provide, I'm going to call this desired caps and then paste in what I copied. We can then change the build to have a different name. We can call this one like the Selenium example. Let's call the name of our test run Selenium example run. And we can leave the platform, browser name, and version alone. Now you may have some other stuff as well. Like for example, you may have resolution, which we had at 1024 by 768. But notice how you can change these as you need. And then we're going to get this desired caps. And for step 3, we'll instantiate the new remote WebDriver that is connected to LambdaTest. So this is where we're going to actually make the driver, right? So WebDriver.remote, since we're connecting to a remote instance, we have the command executor, which is going to connect to our remote URL. And then for the desired capabilities, we called this object desired caps. And look at that, we now have a WebDriver that's connected to LambdaTest. So any test that uses this Selenium fixture is going to be using this driver. And just to make sure we have everything wrapped correctly, the very last thing we need to do is yield the driver so the test can use it. So that would be yield driver, And then when the test is done, driver.quit. And there you have it. That is what the fixture would look like if you were just using Selenium, not Pylenium. Also, remember that this code is available on the GitHub repo that I provided at the beginning of the course, just in case you want to look over it again in more detail. For now, I'm going to copy this object again, just because I added the resolution bit. So I'm going to copy that. And now I'm going to show you how we do the same thing, but instead of creating our own fixture because we were using Selenium, we're going to do this with Pylenium, and you're going to see it's a little bit different. With Pylenium, we achieve this by using the Pylonium.json. Inside of here, we have this capabilities object with nothing inside for now. So all we got to do is replace it with what I copied before. And that's basically it. Now, we're going to make some changes here just because we would have already completed it, and you can see just how easy it was for us to do it in Pylenium. But the next thing I want to show you is creating a shell script that your pipelines will most likely use. So we're going to be running this example here soon. So let's change the name of this build. Let's call this pytest build. And for the name, let's do pytest tutorial. How about that? So in our Explorer, let's make a new folder, and let's call this one just CI. Nice and easy CI. And within this folder, let's make a new file, and let's call this run LambdaTest.sh for shell. Now I'm going to just paste this in so then we can talk about the different pieces rather than seeing me type a whole bunch. So real quick, the first thing that we're doing on line 1 here is making sure that we're saying this is a bash type of shell file. Next on line 3, I'm just telling you here's the flow that we're taking. Step 1 is define the remote URL for LambdaTest, just like we did in the Selenium fixture. So my remote URL is equal to this right here. It should look really familiar because we've done this already. The username is going to go in the left spot, and the access key is going to go in the right spot. This $sign is us accessing the environment variables that we have set on our machine already. Pretty slick, huh? For step 2, we're going to then define the pytest command to execute. Now this can include a whole bunch of stuff like filters, config settings, if-else conditionals, and a whole bunch more. But we're not going to be covering that in this course. Really what I want to show you is that we can filter really anything that we would like to run. So in this case, our current filter is going to be running the test-to-do.py file, but also with the -k of check first item. So -k reads, run all tests in test-to-do.py that contain the name check first item. In our example, we only have one test with that name, and so it's only going to run that single test. But you can change and override this as you need. The very last thing we're doing here is then executing that command. So python-m pytest, use the filter, and then target this remote URL, which is going to run the test suite against LambdaTest. So now that we have this, let's open up a terminal and let's give it a try. Poetry run ci/run LambdaTest.sh. Press enter, and I get an error. It says here permission denied. If you get a permission denied error, that probably means you're running on a Unix machine of some kind, but you just need to update the permissions by running chmod +x on that file. Then try running the shell file again, and it should work now. Perfect. You can see that our one test passed, and our -k filter deselected our 3 other tests. Let's go back to our LambdaTest dashboard to see what's changed now that we've executed a test. I have a lot going on right now just because I've been running tests already, but you should see a single one that says pytest build, right? And it'll say run tests in X amount of seconds. So let's click on this and let's check it out, because now we're going to be looking at the LambdaTest UI. And whoa, check all of this information out. Some things to be looking out for, because I know there's a whole lot right now. Tests run against a specific build. The build value is most likely dynamic in your CI pipeline, so it's a good one to update using your tool's environment variables so you can dynamically change the build your framework is targeting. You can see how long this test took. The duration is 4 seconds. You also see it was against Windows 10 against Chrome version 89, and also that it passed. You even get a video recording of what the test did, so that way you have artifacts and records of everything that's happening. You also have timestamps, dates, exceptions if they were thrown, commands, networks, logs that were executed as well, so you can see everything that was captured. You can filter these. You can create issues, so there's an issue that you wanted to report. There is seriously a whole bunch of information available to you out of the box that we didn't build at all. It's just part of what you get with LambdaTest. So I highly recommend you take some time to explore all of the functionality that is available to you. All right, Carlos, but what about cross-browser testing? We used Windows 10 with Chrome version 89, but now I want to target something else, let's say like Edge on Mac OS. So let's give that a try next. I'm going to be opening the real-time testing page, and you'll see a whole bunch that you can configure. Real-time testing allows you to spin up your application using any of the configured browsers or mobile devices in, well, real time. However, the reason I'm showing you this is because you can use any of these settings and configurations in your automation as well. So I said I wanted to test against Edge. Let's do version 85 against Mac OS Sierra. And for kicks and giggles, let's change the resolution to like 1920 by 1080. Well, there you go. I mean, look how easy it was for us to be able to pick which versions of all these things we wanted to do, right? All we got to do now is update this in our Pylonium.json. So let's do that next. So back in Pylonium.json, I'm going to change this to say pytest build 2, just so we see a different test run in our dashboard. I'll keep the name the same, but for platform, let's change this to say Mac OS Sierra, exactly how it showed in the UI. For the browser name, let's do Edge. For the version, we have 85. And lastly, for our resolution, we had 1920 by 1080. Good thing I remembered that, dang. Save the file, and let's give this a try. So open up a terminal again and run that same command. Let's see what we get. All right, pytest build 2 finished for me, so let me click on the build here. And there you go, look, we're on a Mac with Edge version 85. Isn't that super awesome? I mean, we just changed a few things around and bada bing, bada boom, we got, a new browser going. So it's pretty impressive stuff. But now let's turn it up just a tad and let's see if we can run different tests with different browsers. Because right now, anything that's inside of Pylonium.json is configured globally for the entire project. So all of our tests are going to be targeting Mac OS Sierra with version 85 of Edge. But what if we want different tests to target different browsers? Let's check that out next. Okay, in VS Code, let's go to our test directory. Let's make a new file. And let's call this one test_cross_browser.py. We'll write the new stuff in here. Now, I'm just going to copy and paste again for simplicity's sake. So it's not just me typing the same stuff over again. I'm creating a function here called search, which is just going to do our Google search that we saw before. Right? The only difference really is that instead of me hard coding a search of puppies, we can search any query and we should return, did I land on that query page or not? So that's all I've done here so far is create that function. So now let's write our first test here. So def test Google search in Chrome, and we're going to need our Pylenium fixture. And for this test, let's say the target browser is gonna be the platform of Windows 10. Let's have the browser be Chrome. Let's do version 85. And lastly, the resolution. Let's have this be the 1280 by 1024. So, if you remember, our Pylonium.json currently has everything targeting Mac OS Sierra and Edge. So all of our tests are going to be run against this target. But for this test, we want this one to be different. All of our other tests will run on Mac OS Sierra versus Edge. This test should not. It should run against Windows 10 Chrome. So just for this test, we need to update the Pylenium config to use this new target. And that's actually pretty easy to do. You just say py.config. We have the driver capabilities, and I want to update it with the new target. Hopefully that reads okay. I mean, py.config.driver.capabilities, I want to .update it with the target. But that by itself will now change this test to only target Windows 10 and Chrome. So the last thing we got to do is just run our function, right? Let's search our puppies again. And the test is complete. All right, but let's get the same test and do Firefox this time. So let me copy all this again. So copy this. Let's go under here. Paste to Ruski. But now let's change this from Chrome to say Firefox. And then let's leave Windows 10, that's fine. Let's change this to say Firefox as well. Let's have the version be 81. And the resolution can stay the same. We still need to update the driver capabilities, and we'll still search for puppies again, but this time against Firefox. Okay, I'll save this file. In our Pylonium.json file, I'm going to switch this from pytest build 2 to pytest build 3. Again, just so we can see the different builds inside of the LambdaTest dashboard. And the last thing I want to change now is our CI code. Instead of running all of this, I want to run my test cross browser.py. And since we want to run 2 tests now, I'm also going to include our -n2 to run both of them at the same time. Save this file, and I think we're ready to run the test. So open up a terminal and let's run poetry run ci/run lambdatest.sh. All right, and what does this look like in our automation dashboard now? I have 3 tests because I had to rerun the Firefox test 1 time because I had a small error, but you should see 2 tests. One that says test Google search in Chrome and one that says test Google search in Firefox with the same Windows 10, but different browsers and versions. And oh my goodness, it's a thing of beauty. Here's our Firefox run, searching for puppies. And it's beautiful. All right, we're in the last part of this module, y'all. You may have instances where you would like one test to run against multiple browsers. This is done using pytest parameterized feature. So let's check this out, and then we'll wrap it up, y'all. We're so close. Okay, so let's make a new test file just so then this thing is all by its lonesome. In our test directory, make a new file. And to be super explicit, we're going to call this one test 1 test against many browsers. Oh my gosh, .py. So we know exactly what this test file is for. And like I did in the last section, I'm just going to paste all this in so we can talk about the good stuff instead of seeing me type a whole bunch of stuff. For now, you can ignore these green squigglies because it's just a small issue I'm having with VS Code as I'm recording this, but it shouldn't affect how I run the tests. So starting things off, line 1 and 2, we're importing the stuff we need, which would be pytest and Pylenium. Then on line 5, this is our search function from the last example that we had, so you should know exactly what that's doing. The new part here would be these browser targets. Notice how it is a list of 2 different targets we have. The first target would be this right here. This is our Windows 10 Chrome instance with version 85. The second object here, the second target, would be for Windows 10 Firefox. So using the same example we had in the last section, but now we're going to do something a little bit different. Because the last section we had 2 tests, each test with their own target. This time we're going to write 1 test that will be used to test against both of these browser targets. Very interesting. So let's see how we do that with that parameterized feature I was talking about. So to start us off, we're going to make our test. Def test Google search. We need py just like we always do. There we go. We're then going to want to update this just like we did before. So driver capabilities, update, but then we got to put the target here somewhere, right? Or the browser. We got to pass that in here But how do we do that? We'll see here soon. The very last step of the test is then to assert search py and our puppies. So hopefully everything is looking very similar to what we had before. But the last thing that's missing is passing in our list of browser targets into our test function. At pytest.mark.parameterize, we're going to call each one of these objects just a browser. And this is going to be from the browser targets object right above, right? So right here. Beautiful. And the very last thing is to now pass in browser to our test. And what? The squigglies are gone and the test is complete. So let me walk through this one last time because it looks really simple if you're just looking at this thing on paper, but the concept is really, really powerful. So line 28 is how pytest is marking this test function to be parameterized. This parameterized function asks for two things. It wants to know what the targets are, or what the list of things you want to parameterize are. In this case, we have a browser targets list with two browser objects. The next thing here is, what do you want to call these objects? We're going to call each one of these a browser. We could also call it a target or desired capabilities or whatever you want there. I'm calling it just browser just for simplicity's sake. But there you go. We call it browser. The next thing we need to do is in our signature of the test function, we have Pylenium, which is a fixture, but then browser, which is going to act as one of these browsers every time the test is executed. Wait, what? Every time the test is executed? Think about it this way. This is one test function, a single test function. However, it is two separate test cases. Why? Because there are two separate browser targets. So if I were to run this test sequentially, what would happen is that the first time the test goes through, the first browser is Windows 10 Chrome. And so it's going to load in Windows 10 Chrome in the browser, update the capabilities, and then search puppies against the Windows 10 Chrome browser. Then it's going to execute the test again a second time for the second test case, which is the same test, searching for puppies, but this time updating with this browser, which is Windows 10 with Firefox. So again, it's a single test function, but two separate test cases. This means that we can run these two test cases in parallel, which is where things get pretty insane, but that's just the power of pytest. So let's wrap this up so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. First things first, in Pylonium.json, I'm going to replace this to a 4 and save this file. Then in run LambdaTest, I don't know why I did this to myself. Why did I name it so long? Because now I'm regretting it. Test one test against many browsers. Man, I should have made that not so long. Why didn't you tell me, people that are watching? Save the file here as well. And then let's run this thing. Poetry run ci/run lambdatest.sh. Let's see what we get. And here it is. Sure enough, we have one test called test Google search, and yet it ran it as two completely different test cases. Test Google search against browser 0, which was Chrome, and test Google search against browser 1, which was Firefox. So that's how you can have a single test function targeting multiple browsers. And that's just a simple example. You can now start taking these things to even bigger problems that you're facing and run multiple suites against multiple variations and do this full, more powerful cross-browser testing with LambdaTest. Well, folks, that's it. We're done with the course. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it, and I hope you learned something new. Please reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn at Carlos Kidman, but I'd also appreciate you liking and sharing these videos or giving me feedback as well. Remember, you have awesome resources all around you, like LambdaTest community. But thanks for your time, and best of luck to you on your journey with testing and automation. Bye.